Purpose of this recording is to help you set up a one-way ANOVA in Minitab from your XtendSim results. So we see here that we've run our factorial designs of experiments and that we have some results from XtendSim. Now we want to use those results to do an ANOVA. So step one is to copy your data. So that would be your input data from your factorial design of experiments, as well as any response data that you wish to analyze using ANOVA. Then open a fresh worksheet in Excel, paste your data into Excel. Now we're going to set up some filtering, but first, we need to set up our treatment levels manually in Excel. This is the purpose of copying this to Excel in the first place. So we want to go over to the Data tab and click Filter. Okay, now that we've filtered, the next thing we want to do is do some conditional formatting. The purpose of the conditional formatting is simply to help us visually and make it easier to set up. It's not, strictly speaking, necessary. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to set up several different treatment levels. It's not a good idea when you do ANOVA to do ANOVA on 20 different things at the same time, because the variance is spread over all of the different treatment levels. So you probably only want to do, 4 or 5 at once at the most. So we're going to need to do some filtering and sorting. So first we're going to go ahead and just sort every column A to Z. Okay, we don't want to sort on the end time because the end time is the result for the model. So we're going to leave the end time the way it is. Okay, now we're going to set up the treatment levels. So if we start this, notice here that we can easily see with the conditional cut formatting the cutoff for the treatment levels. So we're going to name our treatment level something. And it's best to name it something meaningful so that when you do the analysis, you can figure out what this treatment level actually was. You don't want to label it treatment 1, treatment 2. Otherwise, that makes some very hard reading when you do the report later. So this is actually, I'm going to label this treatment level, lots of zombies. And just pull this label up. And then the next treatment level is going to be lots of health. So I'm going to label that one big health, and I'm just pulling that label down until I get to the next visual switch over. And I'm going to do a third treatment level to do our ANOVA. So this one, I'm going to just label other stuff. Again, it'd be best to come up with some label that indicates the contents a bit better than this. And I'm going to pull down until I reach the next crossover point that I can see visually with the conditional formatting. Okay, now that I have my treatment levels set up, I'm going to filter so that we don't have the blanks, we just have the treatment levels that I set up and want to look at. And then click the OK button. Now we're ready to go over to Minitab to set ourselves up to do the ANOVA. So I can copy everything I have here. So I'm going to copy everything, including the new treatment level row that I have. Switch myself over to Minitab. Now in Minitab, to do the ANOVA, you're going to want to have a new worksheet to do that. So you set up a fresh worksheet. In your fresh worksheet, you paste everything over from Excel. Now we're ready to go ahead and start doing the ANOVA. Okay, grab the stat menu, go over to ANOVA, and we're going to do, there's a lot of different kinds of ANOVA here. What we're going to be doing is just the one-way ANOVA. Okay, now the key thing in Minitab, the interface is a little bit weird. So you need to make sure that you've clicked into where it says response and then pick end time and then select. Okay, it doesn't like that. It had pre-filled it. So we're just going to delete that and go. Okay, now with treatment level, this, we again have to click on it so something shows up. This, where it says factor, this needs to be your ANOVA treatment levels. So whatever you might have labeled that. And then looking at all these various options, the only one we really care about that we need to do anything that's not the default values inside Minitab is the comparisons. We want to make sure that you have the Tukey comparison set up. Also, you want to have the interval plots and the grouping information as well. Then click OK. And now we can click the OK button. So now notice here on the navigator window, we've got a new window up here, and we'll take a look at what all these different things mean. So this tells us that we've done an ANOVA, and that it tells us what the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis are, the significant level, which factors we're using, and then we get our ANOVA table. So the part that we're most concerned looking at is this p-value. So the p-value, remember the null hypothesis is that all the means, that is all the end times for the intervals are the same. And we have a low p-value, so we have to reject the null hypothesis. So that this means that at least one of the treatment levels has a different mean than the other treatment levels. Unfortunately, does not tell us which one, it just tells us that we have a difference. And we'll get to that in a second about how to go about figuring out which one. The model summary, again, higher R squared means that it's a better fit, but this is okay. It's not unusual not to see super high R squared values with these kinds of models. Okay, so this gives us then the confidence interval for each of the means. So we get that explicitly listed by Minitab. What we're going to do is let the Tukey pairwise comparisons do the work for us. So this chart where we have the grouping information using those confidence intervals, this tells us that, and again, it tells us right here on the chart, if we have two means that don't share a letter, then they're different. So this says that lots of Z, it has a different mean than other stuff and big health, which other stuff and big health statistically have the same mean. Now you notice that here, if you just look at the raw numbers, you might say, well, those don't look the same to me. But statistically speaking, those two numbers, 1.7 and 1.3, are statistically the same. So we then conclude, if we look at the difference in means, look at the confidence interval, if the difference in means can credibly be 0, which is this other stuff versus big health, that means that those two, other stuff versus big health, those two data sets are statistically, we can say that statistically they're the same, whereas lots of Z is not the same as big health, and other stuff is also not the same as lots of Z. The interval plots, again, give us the same information. We can see whether or not the interval plots are overlapping. So the takeaway from this ANOVA is that we have, of our 3 treatment levels, 2 of them are statistically the same, and the third one is statistically different from the other 2.